from Ms. Womack
Yes.
about policy 2120, where she stated that in July, the board meeting the board's meeting agenda shall include a thorough review of this policy, and each member, include all elected official or re-elected board members, will sign a code of ethics statement that includes the provision of this policy. So I want to refer this back to the policy committee.
Yes.
It's just to review the date. I want to say something before that. When you think of what she pointed out to us, the reason why it was July, when I came on this board, and Dr. Smith, the election was in May. When we get elected in May, we're seated in July, and everybody signs the same ethics code. But this time around,
With the change to partisan
with the
elections.
change to partisan election, it comes to November. And in November, December, when they were sworn in, it's supposed to be signed. So I would just ask the policy committee to go for the review. It's just
And look at the date.
and
make
look
sure-
at the date and change it from July to December, so that it will be appropriate for what we're doing. So we don't have to do anything special with it and to review
Okay.
that. Thank you for pointing
Thank you.
that to us.
Well, actually, Mark, just a point of clarification, it's something we're supposed to do every year, regardless of the election, and we are, by law, we are supposed to sit down and go over that and discuss it. It has to also be on our agenda as a regular scheduled item. So whatever item that is, for the last 4 or 5 years that I went backwards, it's not been on that agenda, but that is a requirement that we have from the Board of Ethics.
Yeah,
So-
what I'm just saying is, with Ms. Bowen and your policy committee, you guys go back and make the changes, and then we correct everything. We do that appropriately.
I think that once we establish the date, as long as we get it on a board calendar on a recurring basis and do it
Exactly.
once a year,
Yes.
that will pull us back in alignment with the policy. And I think that's
And-
what the goal is,
and
is to make sure that we have the discussion.
My goal is to
and-
follow the policy.
And especially when we reorganize. Every
Correct.
time we reorganize, we
And
do that.
I honestly, I don't remember, Susan, you would know, did we sign, all of us, new ethics? Okay, at the time of the election. I knew we did at the time of the election, but I think the intent of the policy is that every year we have a review of what the requirements are, just as a refresher. It's kind of like ignorance of the law is not justification for breaking it. And so having that once a year refresher course on what this ethics is and what it means.
And I actually
And
went
that's not
back each June for the last 4 or 5 years, and it wasn't even on the agenda. And
Correct.
it's supposed to be on the agenda items.
So
Just trying to
That's-
make it
I
better.
think that's a
It's-
fairly easy one to come in alignment with.
Yeah, it's noted, and we
very
just
important.
Yes.
fix it. So thank you all for that. At this time, we want the motion for the consent agenda.
2 seconds. Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. That's a motion, and it's here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The motion is approved for the consent agenda. At this time, we'll go to the unfinished business. The review of the superintendent contract extension approval on 7/11/2017.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I move that the Lee County Board of Education ratify, approve, and confirm its July 11th, 2017 action extending the superintendent's contract until June 30th, 2021.
You need a second?
Second.
I thought we were opening for discussion. You just making a motion?
I believe
What?
at the end of the 7/11/2017 meeting, we tabled the discussion, which would mean at this time, if it's the agenda item on the table, that we take up the issue of the discussion prior to any ratification or changing of the decision.
Okay, I will just, maybe we'll hold that up, and what's the question? Or what do you want?
Okay, at the time of the discussion, I had some displeasure, I guess would be a fair way of saying it, with the way that the contract was handled very quickly at the tail end of a closed session in a meeting where it had not previously existed on the agenda. And my concern was that we have a policy in place that says before any modification can happen to the contracts, that we have to have the contract, the amended proposed contract in hand for review. And my concern was that during the June meeting, as we finished up the June meeting, I had said, I'm not gonna be able to make it for the July meeting. I said, I will be available to call in if I need to. The agreement was, it was a very civil, very, natural conversation was, it's the summer months, it's a light agenda, I don't think that'll be necessary.
Whom did you
And
tell that?
You,
No, you never told me
standing
that.
right here on this stage, yes, sir.
No, I have a text message between you and me
On the day of the
on
meeting in July,
on
yes,
the day
sir.
of the meeting, whereby
I said-
whereby I have the evidence here, whereby you asked me if is there anything that you are in, you didn't say, you say, is there anything, you didn't say, is there anything I can read it to the public, because you said it last time. I went back to refresh my mind, and there was nothing to say, call me. You just say you are in Atlanta celebrating your
I
father's
wasn't in Atlanta, but nonetheless, I
in
agree.
Georgia,
I did send you a meeting.
celebrating your daddy's 1 year departure. And when you said that, you said
I'm
you said-
thinking about you guys
and it was-
tonight.
you are
That's exactly what I said. I hope all goes well. I'm thinking about the meeting
Exactly.
tonight. Thanks for your understanding.
and I said,
And
God bless you.
I'm perfectly fine, and I appreciate that. But what I didn't, and to be honest, Dr. Akanosho, is I feel, based upon the information, and I went back and I looked at that same text message, because that was the night of the meeting.
That
It
is
was
the text
before the
message.
meeting happened, absolutely. I'm not going to deny I sent that. That would be silly. But what I'm saying is that if you knew at that point that something as significant as a 4-year extension to the superintendent's contract was coming before this board, as the chairman, I felt that I deserved a professional courtesy of a phone call that just said, hey, Sandra, listen, we're going to do this tonight. And based upon my thoughts and reconsideration of the whole situation, and I could be wrong, and this is total my speculation, I'm not sure you knew that that was going to be brought up in closed session that night. I know from talking to the other members of this board that they had no knowledge that at the end of that closed session that the motion was going to be made to extend the contract. And that is in direct violation of our policies.
That was not
And if you
correct.
knew
That was not
that
correct.
that was coming before our board, then as a professional courtesy, I felt like a simple text back that says, hey, FYI, we're going to amend the agenda tonight to include this item. And that didn't happen.
Let me tell
And
you.
so, yeah, to say my feelings were hurt, because I can tell you from the time I brought this up in the last meeting to today, you have not called me to discuss the situation.
Which-
And once again, that goes back to professional courtesy.
What-
That as a board, the policy states that all board members have to have the opportunity to look at the contract.
You know-
And that didn't happen.
Ms.
Now, so yeah, my feelings are hurt. I'm as equal member on this board as you are. And I said at the meeting last time, I don't care if the situation changes, but as the chair of the policy committee, number one, the most important job we have as a board is to set the policies for the district that we live by. And as the policy chair, I feel a great deal of responsibility to the best of my ability to make sure policies are clear and that they're followed. And that's not just my job, it's the entire board's job to make sure that happens. That's the number one function of a board, is to set and maintain policy. And I believe, upon my reading of the policy, that it was violated. I have spoken to the School Board Association. Ms. Janine Murphy kind of talked to me and she said, Sandra, you're not wrong. She said, what happened does not fall in line with open government. She said, but really and truly, it's not illegal. She said, that doesn't mean it was right. It doesn't mean that it doesn't stink. But the reality is it wasn't illegal. She said, it's up to you as a board to set your policies and follow them. And so that's the only message I want to get out of this, is as a board, we got to do better, y'all. We got to do better. And so whether we take it back to a vote tonight, I really don't care. That's why I said at the last meeting, I don't want to take it back to a motion last meeting when 2 of our members were absent. Because to me, that would be returning the favor. And as a professional and as a professional board, I think we have an obligation to set policy and follow policy. If we can suspend people for violating our school board policy, then by golly, we as a school board should be following them ourselves. And that's my statement.
And Mark, I would like to add, as a point of personal privilege as well, I spent almost 2 hours with Jimmy Love. I spent 3 hours at the North Carolina School of Government and also with the North Carolina School Board Association. That being said, they just reinforced the value, which I think we should all on the board go back and review the ethics policy every year, because when you look at that, you understand that the children and the people in this community are who we answer to. When a teacher calls me or when a parent calls me and says, you guys are not even following your own policies, but yet my kid's been expelled, and this happens and that occurs. I gave the list to Jimmy Love, and I'm sure y'all can read the same policies as well. We were in violation of at least 6 or 7 policies. You're going to say we're not. In that case, then their interpretation is wrong. Because I know I listened to your arguments before. With that being said, we have a duty that we are supposed to present with equality, transparency, accountability to our community. When we don't listen to our community, you know what we get? We get charter schools. When we don't listen to our community, you know what we get? We get lawsuits. These are the things that concern me. If people will go out of their way, which I think is wonderful that they feel like they can talk to me, but when this is said, when we brought this before us at a closed session, at a meeting, by policy, our own policy, it's supposed to be, the amended contract was supposed to be handed to us in a duly timely manner. When you consider a superintendent makes what, $20,000, $30,000 a month average, because you have a salary, you have health, you have et cetera. All the stuff is public knowledge. So when a teacher comes up or when a parent comes up and asks a question, it's our responsibility as a board to be able to answer that. Did we discuss this? No. Did we make any type of qualifications or make any performance measures for our superintendent? The answer is no. Do we hold the teachers accountable? It's yes.
Ms. Womack,
Yes.
I let you talk, but we have to correct some erroneous belief. We don't have a superintendent here that makes $30,000 a month.
So can you tell us exactly how much he makes a month?
That's not.
Since you said it's public knowledge, so tell me, sir, with all due respect, can you tell me exactly? And I have the contract right here. The public would like to know. You know what his contract is: health, dental, medical, and that's not even the issue. But you're saying that's not what he makes. How many charitable organizations or how many various organizations, to include the Chamber of Commerce, is he a member of, and how much do you pay? I suspect that you cannot answer that question. How much was spent in the last year for health benefits? How much have you attributed to the retirement? But none of those are the
Ms.
issues.
Womack,
The issues is we
you are-
should have been able to go over that
You are out of
before we
order.
approved
What
it.
you are discussing right
Okay,
now
I'm
is
done.
you are out of order. What you're discussing right now is out of the parameters of our discussion. Okay?
Our discussion is the
So-
renewal of the superintendent's contract. We should have went over it in detail.
What she said, I was able to correct that. And if anybody goes back to see what I said during the last meeting, there is transparency on this board. Nobody is trying to do anything. And one of the violations that was there in what Ms. Bowen read on that day, she was insulting one of the board members of sweet talking and all of that thing. Those are ethical violation of the board. If you are insulting your fellow board members, we say we're not going to insult anyone. We're not going to be insulting each other. We have the documents, but that's not what we have right now. I think we need to move forward as a board and saying that somebody is in violation. Number one, when we took the action, we have done the evaluation of the superintendent for 3 months, 2 months earlier. We did the evaluation. What's next? The next is his contract. His contract was in his final year, and we have to do something about it. And you were saying that we didn't tell individual board members. That's That's not transparency. If we're calling everybody and say, are you going to be on? We discuss it. Somebody make a motion. We have the superintendent a contract on that day. You say you want it to be on the board agenda. Excuse me. Every principal, we don't put every administrator. We don't put their.
Mark, this is our
something on-
superintendent. The most significant job that
It
we have as
doesn't
board
matter.
members
It
is to
doesn't
hire
matter.
the superintendent
I think,
and
we need-
enforce
I think
policy.
we need to move forward.
Respectfully disagree.
It's under personnel. It's
Point
under
of,
personnel.
point of personal privilege, if you will.
You
Mr.
have had one.
Akinosha.
I don't know if somebody else wants to talk. You have one. Somebody else. Anybody on the. If we don't, we need to.
Mr.
move.
Chair.
There's a point of order.
Yes.
You need to go back to the original part. Come back up without all the foo-for-all.
Okay.
Please.
The original discussion of the contract, it was the agenda issues and everything. And I understand that part of your argument is that it should have just been assumed that it was in personnel. And so I did a little research of my own, going back through old minutes. And what I found was in April of 2016, November of 2016, April of 2017, and I don't have the 2015. In each of these cases were the times that we did the superintendent's evaluations, okay? We have the informal evaluation, the formal evaluation in 2016 is a separate agenda item on the agenda. In fact, we had a single closed session for personnel. We came back into open session to pass it, and then we go back into closed session to discuss the evaluation.
Yes.
We did that for both formal and informal, and these are just evaluations. This is not the expenditure of $1 million of taxpayer money. And so to say that one word, personnel, where we hire everything from substitute bus drivers to teachers and principals, we should just know that we're also going to extend a contract when we have the option of 1-year extensions, 2-year extensions, 4-year extensions. To say that by reading one word on an agenda that we should have miraculously known that the superintendent's contract was in there, I think is disingenuous. And I don't think anybody can sit at this table and say when they walked into the meeting in July that they knew from looking at the board packet that it was on the agenda. And again, I'm going to go back to what I said originally. I believe with every ounce of my being that the policy was indeed violated. Does that make the contract invalid? Based on what I understand, there's only one way we can go backwards on that contract. I spoke to an attorney at the School Board Association, and she said, Sandra, there's not a whole lot you can do about it because the contract was executed. It was executed the next day. Well, we can get into a discussion about that too, because if you look at every other extension, it took some time from the time the vote happened to the time it was signed. This time it was less than 24 hours later it was signed and executed. That being said, that's neither here nor there. Upon the conversation with the School Boards Association, they said the only way you can undo a contract without having negative action is if your superintendent said, you know what, I don't want any hard feelings, and I don't want anybody to feel that they got left out of a discussion, so let's undo it. And she said, who is going to do that? And I said, I kind of understand that, because it's a 4-year contract, and I think Andy's smart enough not to let go of it. And I go back to my original statement. As a board, we owe a due diligence to know ahead of time what's going to be on the agenda, to have the opportunity to research and discuss and know what we're voting on before we make a decision. Now, I will publicly right now apologize, because I do understand, Dr. Smith, after rereading my comments, why you felt that I was insulting. It was not an intentional slant. And I will publicly right now apologize to you for any hard feelings, and I don't want that to continue. This is a professional board, and I will conduct myself as professionally as I know how from henceforth and forward. I will say, however, that when we don't follow our policies, it sets us up in a position to have public embarrassment, and I don't think that that's what we want as a board. I think we want to do things by the book to the best of our ability. Take that for what it's worth.
We have a motion. I don't think I want to keep on arguing the same thing over and over. We didn't do anything out of extraordinary.